What's going on, world? It's your girl Mel here. And before I get started, I just want to say that in everything I do, it is my purpose to help, heal, educate, motivate, inspire, and challenge rationales. And today I am going to share my thoughts on the R. Kelly docu-series. Okay, but before I get started, I want to speak really quickly on triggers. Triggers are anything or anybody that is a reminder of a negative traumatic experience where those reminders bring about negative emotional and mental reactions where, depending on the severity of that experience, those reactions can be disruptive to an individual's daily life. And what I do know is that a lot of victims and survivors like myself were very triggered by the docu-series and the talk going on around it. Speaking of triggers, I want to speak really quickly on a post that I did a few days ago. In the post, I went to the R. Kelly page and I found my list of friends who are on his page, and I screenshot the entire list, well over 400 people. I put the list on my page, and in the post, number one, I specifically said that my reason for putting the screenshots up was because I want to make people aware. I'm an advocate. That's what I do. So there were a lot of people who were not aware that they were on his page. A lot of us have been on Facebook for a long time. They liked it a long time ago, didn't know they were still on there. There were some survivors who saw a couple of advocates on there. It made them feel uncomfortable. I had to let the advocates know. I make people aware. As an advocate, it's what I do. But my second reason for putting it up was for my mental stability, to just simply say that if you know beyond a shadow of a doubt emphatically that you support R. Kelly, just do me the favor and support my healing and remove yourself from my page. I have the right to ask you to do that, just like you have the right to support your own mental well-being, okay? So I ask you, my point was to say, listen, I know who you all are. If you're not going to remove yourself from my page, just know that while I'm scrolling through my news feed, that if I come across anything that has anything to do with R. Kelly as far as glorifying him, his videos, I don't want to see video clips of his concerts where he's doing provocative things because they trigger me. I don't want to see those things. So my reason for the post was to say that it's not that I don't like you. I just don't want to see those things in my news feed, okay? I know that this is an uncomfortable conversation, but just imagine how uncomfortable it is for a lot of victims and survivors, especially those who have never shared their stories, and many of them who are around you are your children, okay? So let's jump really quickly into what I want to discuss because it's a lot of ground, and I don't want to miss anything. Okay, the reasons why the docuseries is so important. Number one, it gives us an opportunity to discuss topics that are tough but relevant to our community. Sexual violation, childhood sexual abuse. You know my experience. I was molested and raped by my biological father at 13. He was my first. I wasn't his first. I wasn't his only one. He's hurt a few women. I know other women. I know other family and friends who've experienced sexual violation. I know people who have approached me locally. I know people that I've worked with for the past 3 years all over the world, women, men, and children, who have experienced sexual violation. Don't get me wrong. It has no respect of person, gender, race, nationality, ethnicity, not even economic status. But coming from the black community, I do know that it is very rampant, and it is something that we do not talk about, and it does get swept up under the rug. When you're talking about childhood sexual abuse, I always reference the statistic that 60% of our young black girls will be sexually abused before the age of 18, many of them in their own homes, in their own families, and within their local communities. Young black girls are sexualized from the womb, and then we are beaten, we are demeaned and disrespected and berated for it. And Malcolm X said back in 1962, and I love this quote because it still rings true: the most disrespected person in America is the black woman, the most unprotected person in America is the black woman, and the most neglected person in America is the black woman. Okay, look at the situation with the young girl at the McDonald's that had to defend herself when the man grabbed her over the counter. And then look how you guys talk about the victims of R. Kelly, calling them fast ass and fast tail girls. Understand that we've been talking about this for 20 years. So those are grown women now with children and families, but at the time they were young girls, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, that had gotten involved with a grown man. And then, I mean, the porn tape that R. Kelly had with the 14-year-old is floating around now on social sites. I heard it was on Snapchat, and it's on porn sites. So regardless of the fact that this young lady is a grown woman now, she will forever be known as the child that R. Kelly had sex with and pissed on. That is like one of the most degrading things that a person could ever be remembered for. And then when you talk about our, our young black girls being berated and degraded, and we have sex trafficking going on, and our young black girls are getting missing like every day, like so many every day. We have the biggest case with Centoya Brown, was sex trafficked at 16. She shot and killed one of her Johns, I will say, because she thought he was going to kill her first. And at 16, as a minor, they gave her life, and she served 13 years. But with the effects of social media, I believe, her name was brought to the forefront, and I think that's a part of the reason why she was given attention and received clemency, and she should be coming home in August with 10 years probation. The thing is, you can't support Centoya Brown and women like her, and there are a lot of other women like her that we throw our support behind. But you can't support women like Centoya Brown and not support the victims of R. Kelly because you like his music. They're one and the same. And another thing, too, is that what you need to think about is that R. Kelly has just become more sophisticated with what he's doing. When the tape came out of the underage girl at 14, when Jim DeRogatis wrote that article on him, he had already had several, like a lot of indictments with underage girls. If I'm not mistaken, by the time the whole tape come out and he was in court for that, he was instructed not to be around underage children, period. So he just became more sophisticated. He knows that the age of consent in Chicago and Atlanta is 16 and 17. So he grooms the girls young, but they don't come into his house until they have the age of consent. So that way they become willing participants, and then you guys will point the fingers at them and say that they basically asked for it. But this is one thing that I want to point out. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. Although these women, and we're going to say the older women who willingly went with them, because those are the ones y'all kind of like to toss to the side. But if those older women willingly went with him, is it still okay that he's abusing them? Is it still okay that he's starving them, keeping them from their families, and making them go to the bathroom in the corners? Because I guarantee you this, if you have a brother, if you have a sister, a mother, a niece, a daughter, a friend of the family, a young girl, and she has a boyfriend, and that boyfriend starts beating her and raping her and starving her, you're going to be pissed and you're going to want to do something about it. What is the difference with R. Kelly? There is no difference, okay? You guys are really doing a double standard here, not wanting to support these girls. And with this whole fast-tail thing, like I said, if you believe that these girls are fast-tailed and fast-ass, then you believe that someone should have taught them better. If you believe that someone should have taught them better, then we do agree, okay, that they are not mentally prepared to be involved with grown men, especially grown men with the at the level of R. Kelly, okay? Also, you have to understand that, and I mean, most states have an age of consent for a reason. It behooves me for those states who don't, but because children are not mentally prepared. They don't have the mental preparedness and capability to deal with intimacy on a sexual level. I mean, quite simply, look at adults. Look at some adults who become unraveled and unstable after becoming sexually involved with someone. You got what I call these emotional ass men who are out here killing women because they can't get a phone number, or the women say, I got a boyfriend. If adults are not mentally prepared or capable of dealing with sexual intimacy, how do you feel like children are? And I do want to say that one of the worst ways, when we're talking about black girls being demeaned, one of the worst ways that R. Kelly demeaned his victims was with Lisa Van Allen. She got involved with him when she was 17 years old, and R. Kelly made her have sex with another teenager that he told her was 16 at the time. Come to find out, she was 14. That was actually the 14-year-old who was in the tape with him. Okay, so he made this girl have sex with a child, unbeknownst to her. And now, even as an adult, she's still dealing with the trauma from that. I mean, if you guys can't understand anything else, can you put yourself in her shoes and understand that if, okay, say you want to be wild and you want to try something new, so you go and you have this threesome, and then later you found out that you had a threesome with a child. Like, don't think that would mess with your mental just a little bit? You guys need to think about that. But if you would watch the documentary or the docu-series, then you know, because you guys, a lot of you guys just even refuse to watch it. When it comes to sexual violation in the black community, we have to teach our children that that sexual violation, no matter what it is and who it's perpetrated by, that it's wrong. Okay, whether it's saying something out the way, whether it's a look, whether it's a touch, we have to teach them that it's wrong. Watch who you have around your children. Stop leaving your children with these boyfriends. We have got to create a safe, supportive, and protective environment for these kids so that they will come and talk to us when they're feeling uncomfortable. Listen to your children when they talk. And women, listen. We all have to grow on in our own accord, but you have got to learn to be strong and sufficient enough to live without a man instead of holding on to these men whenever they hurt your children. There are so many women out here that will willingly give their children over to anybody, over to a family member, over to CPS, DIFUS, DCFS, all because they would rather keep that man in their house instead of getting rid of that man who hurt their child. Okay? My mom raised us that if you take care of your children, God will take care of you. If you believe that because you believe that you serve a God that is protective of us all, then you do believe that if you don't do right by your children, then too much ain't gonna go right for you in your life. Okay? So we gotta protect our children out here. I want to say to the parents, watch your children, particularly online. Watch their activities in chat rooms, messengers, and social sites. Predators are online. Okay, they're online. They're listening to the attitudes of those who are defending, supporting, protecting, and deflecting from this conversation. And while they're watching these attitudes and listening to these attitudes, they're also watching your children. Okay, preying on your children. They know your children will not be believed. They feel like they will be ignored and they will be blamed. They know that victims, period, will not be believed. They will be ignored or they will be blamed. Okay, parents, watch how you talk about rape, predators, victims, and survivors around your children. Okay, if they hear you protecting the predator, they will not talk to you. If they hear you making rape jokes and jokes about victims and survivors, they are not going to talk to you. If they feel you will not support them, they will not talk to you. If they are afraid for any reason, they will not talk to you. Parents, do not force affection on your children. Number one, you are teaching them that they do not have the right to their own bodies. You are teaching them that they have to compromise their comfortability for the sake of pleasing someone else. Okay, that is huge. If a child is acting distant from someone and doesn't want them touching him or her, don't make them. There's a reason why they're acting that way. Children are standoffish from adults for a reason, and some from certain adults because they've already had certain experience, whether it was a look, whether it was a touch, whether they just simply feel uncomfortable. They're trying to prevent something from happening or something from happening again. So pay attention. And by you forcing them to be around that person, you are putting them in the position to potentially have that experience again or to have something happen if nothing has already happened. So be cognizant of that. If a child is steady telling you they don't want to be around a certain person, they don't want to spend the night at so-and-so's house, listen to them. There's a reason why. If your child is all of a sudden acting out, aggressive, fighting, yelling, throwing tantrums, ask why. If your child is all of a sudden standoffish and not wanting to be around friends, their manner of dress has changed, particularly with girls where they have more clothes like sweats during the summertime, ask questions. If your child is all of a sudden exhibiting sexual behavior, especially at an early age, or becoming curious, extremely curious, because kids are curious anyway, okay? But if they're talking about asking explicit questions about sex and body parts, ask why. They're inquisitive for a reason. Parents, pay attention to people who are overly nice to your children. People who are always asking to help you and offering money and gifts. particularly asking for your kids to spend the night or to go away with them. And particularly for single parents, okay? I'm a single mother. Excuse me. We're very vulnerable because we can always use the help. Our sons can be very vulnerable because as single mothers, we always welcome help from a man for our sons. So we have to be careful because predators, of course, take advantage of that vulnerability. The topic that is relevant to the black community that we need to discuss is ignoring the fact that young boys are being violated too. First off, we don't want to have the conversation. Second off, we really are ignoring the fact that young boys are being sexually violated as kids. Um, Instead of having this conversation, jokes are being made. D. Ray came out. He talked about his experience, and all these black men just made jokes about it. Chris Brown is well known that he was violated as a kid too, and there are others. But instead of us having this conversation, there's jokes are being made about it, and the guys are not being respected, and their experiences are not being seen as rape and unacceptable, and that's not fair to them. Because I guarantee you that I've talked to a lot of guys and young boys who have been violated as kids, and they did not appreciate those experiences. They don't think it's funny, and they experience some of the same residual effects that women experience too. In my experience in working and talking with men who have experienced sexual violation, black men in particular, they go through some of the same residual effects that we do. And there is a possibility of 37. It's just that we handle them differently because of our different, gender proclivities and, tendencies. But they experience the same residual effects that we do. And it's sad to say, but there are a lot of broken men walking around who are broken because they have experienced sexual violation as a child. I'm looking at my list here, and that is the reason why a lot of men are overly sexualized. I watched the interview with Carrie Kelly where he talked about his older sister molested him and R. Kelly. Well, he hated it. When he talks about it, you can see him well up, and he, it bothers him to even talk about that stuff. But he said R. Kelly loved it, and he became overly sexualized for it. This is a lot of the reason why a lot of men hate women, and they're always angry and aggressive toward women, even during sex. This is a lot of the reason why some men are detached from women, emotionally detached, and you don't understand why they can't sympathize or empathize with you sometimes. This is a lot of the reasons why they may be overly attached to women, like the stalker types. This is a lot of the reason why some men feel inferior and inadequate because the older women that they may have had their experiences with, some of them may have been told you're not doing it right, you're not good enough, and things like that. And being told that as a child, a lot of the PTSD that we deal with is based on our thoughts. When we have these experiences as kids and those initial thoughts that we have, we carry them on as adults. So if you're a young man and sex is being forced upon you, and then you're being beat or taunted because you're not doing it right, you're going to carry those insecurities as adults. So that's a lot of the reason why a lot of men are inferior and feels inadequate. There are a lot of men who, like I said, have a hard time in relationships because they were violated as children. And what's most important and what we need to remember is that going around us every day, a lot of the young boys around you are getting hurt. Talk to your children, okay? Talk to the children around you. If the children around you are acting like something is wrong, it probably is. Another topic that we need to discuss within the black community is that women rape too. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who were violated by women. There's not even really much to discuss there. Is that we do need to acknowledge the fact that more often than not, there are a lot of women out here raping these children. Another topic that this whole thing, this R. Kelly thing, allows us to talk about is generational curses. I am a part of a generational curse. My father was sexually abused as a child. My mother was sexually abused as a child. My father was a victim who turned into a predator, who married a victim and had sex with his daughter. Okay, generational curses. And then with R. Kelly and his brother, who were abused by his older sister Teresa. Teresa's daughter was also touched by Teresa's oldest son, okay, which was her brother. And then Teresa's daughter later became inappropriate with her uncle, Carrie, R. Kelly's brother. Generational curses, okay? I have incest on both sides of my family, and my daughter is also a victim of sexual violation as well. So this conversation, this climate, it gives us the opportunity to talk about that generational curses. If we don't stop it somewhere, it's just going to continue to spill over into future generations, which means that your kids and your kids' kids and their kids' will continue to experience these sexually violating experiences, within the families going on. So we got to stop it somewhere. I also want to discuss it. There are three terms related to, or three terms that we discuss with regard to sexual violation in children, and that is pedophilia, hebephilia, and ephebophilia. Pedophilia is the attraction to prepubescent children prior to the age of 11. Hebephilia is attraction to children 11 to 14, and ephebophilia is attraction to teens 15 to 19. When you're talking about sexual violation or childhood sexual abuse, children have the potentiality to experience sexual violation from the time they're born. If you pay attention, you'll see articles where children have been raped at 2 months and 4 and 6 months, and then 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6 years old. So children have the potentiality of experience a sexual violation at any of these ages and in these three different stages. Again, that's pedophilia, which is attraction to prepubescent children prior to the age of 11. And then there's hebephilia, attraction to children 11 to 14. And then ephebophilia, which is attraction to teens 15 to 19. And again, like we said, there are statutory laws for a reason, because children are not mentally prepared to deal with intimacy on a sexual level. We really need to have that conversation about grown men and women dating children, teens, okay? And we don't really acknowledge the fact that women do it, and they do. But a lot of the men know that their friends are doing it and their family members are doing it. And a lot of you men really need to check your friends. You need to check your people, okay? That brings us to when we talk about accomplices. When we watch this Surviving R. Kelly docuseries, there were a lot of people around who helped him take advantage of those young girls. And this allows us to have the conversation of predatory behavior within the entertainment industry. And what I want to say is, parents, stop being so overly eager to get your kids into entertainment, sports, dancing, gymnastics. Predators take advantage of their over eagerness. There are people who prey on your children for the sake of money, for themselves and for others. So you need to be cognizant of that. One of the things that I think is very telling with this whole climate, with the R. Kelly thing, is with the Bill Cosby case, the black community was one-sided, because most of the black community sided with Bill Cosby. They didn't believe that he raped all these white women, so they threw the white women under the bus, and black folks mainly sided with Cosby. But with this whole R. Kelly thing, it is split down the middle, and that's scary, and it's sad for our children, and it's sad for victims and survivors, because with that split down the middle, it's essentially like there's a tug of war of what we're trying to protect the predator here and protect the children here. And it's basically telling the children that predatory behavior is okay, that they won't be protected, won't be believed, and of course telling the victims and survivors the exact same thing. So I think there's something very telling about us as a people and as a community. One of the things that I do appreciate about this R. Kelly thing is that, if nothing else, it brought a lot of things to light. It brought a lot of feelings and emotions, and people really, truly revealed who they were or who they are. And for me, that's a blessing, because it just lets me know who not to be around and who not to have my children around. So I thank God for that. As I mentioned before, what we need to understand is that these young girls at the time that they were being abused and were assaulted and raped and all that stuff by R. Kelly, that they were young, okay? And whenever you experience sexual violation, I know particularly as a child, you stand the possibility of suffering from one of 37 different residual effects. So R. Kelly has perpetuated this behavior onto these women and has affected the lives of so many women in such a negative way, leaving them with PTSD and other disorders, depression, anxiety, panic, um, and you know he's had these young women grow into wounded adults, women who have tried to raise families, and then that goes back to the whole generational curse thing. When you experience trauma, if that trauma is not healed, then it goes on into the bloodline of your children, and that behavior is perpetuated in some form of fashion. The struggles. I can personally tell you what it is to have to struggle raising your children after you've been traumatized. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And every day is a struggle because you're trying to get yourself healthy and right so that you can instill the right things into your children so that they don't be hurt themselves and they don't go out there into the world and end up hurting anybody else. Okay, another topic that we need to talk about is deflecting. Okay, deflection. Deflection simply means switching the subject, using one subject to take the attention off of another one. Diverting, okay, and in this particular situation with R. Kelly, we are, or those who are deflecting the blame from the predator and placing it either on the victim or all of these other whatabouts. Okay, that means that you're placing blame on everybody except for the predator. Okay, you guys saw the tape with the 14-year-old, and you still refuse to believe that it was R. Kelly. You still believe he was innocent because he was acquitted. Yet and still, you will just have pitched a whole bitch when you talk about George Zimmerman being acquitted. Why? Because we felt like he was guilty. Same difference with R. Kelly. Okay, you saw the tape, that wasn't good enough. Jim DeRogatis wrote an article back in 2013 that had well over 20 pages of information, which included court documents and statements from friends, family, and business associates. Okay, and you guys refused to read it. And now they've basically created a whole 3-part docuseries, 2 hours a piece per night, that basically gives you all of the information that was in the 2013 article that you refused to read, and now you refuse to watch it. Okay, they give you that information plus this new information with these women that he's holding captive, and you refuse to watch it. And then on top of that, you deflect with the whatabouts, so you refuse to have this conversation. Okay, but yet and still you will argue and debate your point of defending what you refuse to know. This is called cognitive dissonance, okay? When you refuse to accept actual truths that may contradict what you believe. Okay, that's very simple. That means that you believe something over here, but here are the facts. Okay, the facts are being presented to you, but because you believe this so strongly, you don't even want to hear what the facts may be. Why? Because they contradict what you already believe. You can't gain knowledge like that. And when you refuse to accept facts while deflecting, then you're only proving and showing yourself to be ignorant. Okay. And I referenced a meme that I saw with this guy, and he stated that basically, we have all these whatabouts. What about the white man? What about Harvey Weinstein? What about this, that, and the third? Well, there's a lot of that is being handled within with law enforcement. Harvey Weinstein is in court. Kevin Spacey, I think, has been in court. And Roman Polanski, Woody Allen, they have been excommunicated from Hollywood, basically. And there is a lot that's going on that a lot of you don't know about because you're not watching it and looking outside of what he called the black bubble. Because there are other things going on, but you're not paying attention. Okay, anytime you can say, what about this, what about that? Just like he said, there are documentaries that have been made about the Catholic Church, and there was one of the priests or whatever that just got like 70 years for what he did. So some things are being done. Now, I will continue to say that any black person who is sitting around waiting for there to be some type of equilibrium when it comes to the justice system, you are definitely fooling yourself, because the justice system was not created for us. The justice system was created by white people to protect them, to further protect them, and to further suppress and oppress us. That is not going to change as long as the biggest men in power here in our world are these same white men who continue to inherit that power through their generations. That's not going to change. So we cannot sit and keep worrying about what about the white man and this, that, and the third when we cannot get straight what's going on in our own house. It's just like I tell my children, if my child say, Mommy, can I do this, that, and the third, and I say no, and they say, well, so and so get to do whatever, the first thing I'm going to say, I don't give a damn about what they do in their house. I care about what's going on in mine. And it's the same thing with us here in the black community. We cannot consume ourselves about what about so and so, what about this, that, and the third, when you know that the system was created to protect them. So they're not going to bring their own down, but they will bring us down. Don't get me wrong. We get little morsels here and there where there's things like there's some equilibrium, whatever, injustice. We get little bones sometimes, things like thrown to us, but when we have so much miscarriages of justice, it just you see where there's an imbalance. So if you're sitting around waiting to convict R. Kelly and anybody else because you're waiting to see what they're doing with the white man, you are only causing strife and keeping us in our community bound, and you're not protecting our children. Okay. So what are some of these deflecting what about topics? What about the white man's agenda to destroy the black man? What about the Catholic Church? What about the parents? What about government shutdown? Look how long it took them to bring this up. Well, we've been talking about it for 20 years. You guys just haven't been talking about it, and you guys haven't been reading, and you guys haven't been listening. You guys don't want to watch the docuseries, and you guys don't want to have the conversation. So don't say, why are they just bringing it up now? We've been trying to bring this up since 2000? Okay? We are in 2019, almost 20 years. Okay? And then reparations. Seriously? I don't even have no words for that. Now we get into why deflecting is a problem. Deflecting is a problem because it causes us to avoid important topics. It doesn't allow us as a community to discuss topics relevant to our healing, particularly sexual violation and the residual effects that are associated with that trauma and how we carry that trauma into our lives as adults. It is a problem because the predators have no fear of retribution. Okay, we are essentially telling them that their behavior is okay. Deflecting is a problem because, in essence, you're showing support for the predator, and you're condoning the behavior. When you defend and support a predator and deflect from the conversation, you are, in a sense, condoning the behavior. If you are condoning their behavior, you are, in a sense, displaying predatory behavior because you are creating a predatory environment for the predator to thrive and prey on victims. So the behavior doesn't only say a lot about the person, but it says a lot about you as a person if you support and defend them and deflect from having the conversation. Another reason why deflecting is a problem is because it displays ignorance, all of your ignorance. It shows that you are not paying attention to what's going on around you outside of that black bubble. Okay, and another reason why deflecting is a problem because we as a community will never be taken seriously. We can't unite. It's easy for them to pull the wool over our eyes because we forgive so easily, we're gullible, and we don't place value on ourselves, okay? But we continue to scream Black Lives Matter. Do they really, okay? Or do they just matter when black women are in the forefront marching for our men who are dying in the streets? So we need to consider why deflecting from this conversation, the problems that it caused for our community. Okay. And here are some questions that I have for those who support R. Kelly. Okay. Many of those supporting him probably aren't watching this, but these are questions that can be posed to other family and friends when you're having these discussions. Okay, number one, the women that R. Kelly is or have held captive that went with him on their own accord, say around 17 or so, 17 and up. Do you think that it is okay for R. Kelly to abuse them, demean, and dehumanize them, not feeding them and making them use a bucket in the corner of a toilet? Okay. He's also gone as far as to try to further expose them through Facebook, on a website, and both have been shut down. And he also posted tapes, pictures, and text messages. Okay. Do you think that's okay? And when you're thinking about that question, think about your sister, think about your niece, think about your daughter, think about yourself, placing yourself in that situation. Answer that question, okay? Why do you think rape jokes are funny? Why do you do them? And knowing that these jokes could potentially hurt people and push them to the brink of psychosis, suicide, or homicide, you still think it's okay to do these jokes. Why? Okay? If you're okay with what R. Kelly has done, and you believe that he has done all that he's done, what do you suggest is being done to him? If you don't suggest jail time, or what do you suggest? Do you suggest we leave him alone? Do you think that he's just going to stop if we just leave him alone? Do you think that he's actually stopped messing with underage girls? I mean, he's being accused now of, I think, his own 14-year-old cousin or niece or something getting her pregnant. So what do you suggest happens to him? Okay? Those are the questions that I have for his supporters. Okay, guys, in conclusion, at the end of the day, the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries is really not about R. Kelly, okay? It's about, number one, exposing the industry for its predatory behavior of children and women, and how the entertainers are protected because of their net worth to those they work for and those who work for them. It's about bringing the topic of sexual violation, particularly childhood sexual abuse, to the forefront, and how these childhood traumas affect the children and family into adulthood, thereby affecting their children and their families. Generational curses. It brings up the topic of generational curses, and how if we don't stop these atrocities in our families, they will continue through our lineage to the next generations. It also brings up the topic of protecting our black women, because if polled, most black women do not feel respected or protected by the men in our community. And it gives us the opportunity to come up with solutions together so that we can create a safe and supportive space for victims and survivors, particularly our children. And we need to come up with ways to prevent sexual violation from happening, in essence, to make sure everyone is protected, especially our children, because at the end of the day, that is what this is all about, protecting our children. A lot of us adults are nothing but children who were hurt. And the crazy thing is, a lot of us have to do is look at our own lives and see that we are products of our environments around us. A lot of us grew up in trauma, whether it was childhood sexual abuse, whether it was just grew up in domestic violence with physical abuse. But look around in your own environments. Look at the lives that you've lived based on the environment that you come from. We have to be cognizant in the environments that we raise our children, okay? Because that's what this is ultimately about. It's not about R. Kelly. It's about protecting our children. If you believe that those young girls were fast-tailed and they were fast-assed, then you understand that we need to protect our children at a young age. We have to raise them correctly so that when they start getting older, that they understand that dealing with a grown man is not something that they should be doing. They're not capable, they're not ready, okay? So, a young man caliber who is also who's popular on social media, he said this: "You won't accept the testimonies of the women in surviving R. Kelly because you're too weak to survive without R. Kelly, because you don't stand for nothing. And we as a people will continue to be bamboozled, hoodwinked, and run astray. Because if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything," okay? And Malcolm X said the black man will never get anybody's respect until he first learned to respect his own woman, okay? And there should be no quotes needed to explain why we need to protect our children. We just should, always, okay? And this is my last word for those who continue to support, protect, and defend predators and deflect the conversation, thwarting our efforts to protect our women and children. Your ignorance will find you. I pray that it doesn't find you through your children or through someone that you love. Okay? Thank you all for your time. As always, in everything that I do, it is my purpose to help, heal, educate, motivate, inspire, and challenge rationales. And remember, learn to love yourselves adequately so that you can attract the right love to you so that you can adequately love others. Okay? Thank you again for your time. I appreciate you guys. Love you. Later.